piles of trunks and bandboxes and goodness only knows what else. It felt more like Smith graduation than an embarkation. Well, she hadn't really expected them to come, had she? Her mother had made her disapproval clear. "Have you run mad?" was a phrase that didn't leave itself open to much misinterpretation. There were lifeboats all around, swung out in the ready position in case of need. On the walls, strongly worded notices forbade such dangerous activities as smoking after blackout once they reached the war zone. Blackout. War zone. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe she had run mad. Blame the day. That July day that had been hotter than hot, her room in the boarding house sweltering, the stupider-than-usual student who had come to her for tutoring in French, the sweat dripping down the back of her neck making her itchy and irritable. At that moment, any place in the world had seemed preferable to where she was, to that horrible, stultifying room that stank of cabbage, the brainless debutantes she had elected to teach in what had been meant to be a temporary position, but had become 6 years of mindless drudgery. Kate hadn't cared terribly much about the cause itself, but the idea that someone would pay her way— there were funds, Emmy assured her, it wouldn't be charity, nothing like charity— to go abroad had seemed too good a chance to miss. "We need you, Kate," Emmy had pleaded, and she'd allowed herself to be persuaded, less from charity than from desperation. Desperation to be anywhere other than where she was. She knew it was madness in her mother's eyes. Here she was, with a good position, a respectable position, a teacher at a private girls' school. She would never have to scrub floors and empty chamber pots as her mother had, never have to wear a white cap and lower her eyes and curtsy to her betters as they swept past her, making dark prints on a floor she had just cleaned. She had gone off to Smith, and look what had happened. Her mother hadn't said that, not precisely, but it was there between them, there in all the things they never said, there in Kate's clothes, her accent, the way her dad— not her father, always her dad, the man her mother had married when she was 9, kind, always kind, but not her father, never her father— called her our college girl. They were proud, yes, but also wary. She'd become a thing apart. Or maybe she always had been. Kate was the one relic of her mother's first marriage. You could stick a ring in a drawer, but flesh and blood was harder to hide, especially flesh and blood that was old enough to remember and to mind that her past was being scrubbed away like chalk from a board. The early years, when her father had driven the cart for the brewery and come home smelling of beer and horse to tell long stories in his heavily accented English. And after that, the lean years, when she and her mother had been all in all to each other, sharing a bed in the one-room apartment where the radiators never worked and the water came out brown, where her mother scrubbed the stairs in exchange for the roof over their heads, where they ate bread and dripping for supper and pretended it was all they wanted. It had been hard, but they had been together. They had been themselves. But then had come Frank Shaughnessy, member of the Ancient Order of Hibernians, one of Brooklyn's finest, a good man, a steady man, a policeman. Her mother had put cotton gloves over her reddened hands. There had been meat in the stew and sweet-smelling things in the kitchen and 4 little brothers, one after the other, each louder than the last. Kate had spent more and more time in the local library, reading her way around the shelves as the light shifted with her, the first one there after school, the last one out at dusk. Her parents might blame Smith for making her a stranger, but it had all happened long before Smith. She'd been a shadow on the edge of their life well before she'd won the scholarship that took her to Northampton. The one time Kate tried to go back, after Smith, after that summer with Emmy in Newport, well, suffice it to say, it hadn't been a success. It wasn't that there hadn't been room for her. They'd made room, even though it was tight in that 2-family house with her 4 brothers all crammed into one room. But they hadn't known what to do with her, or she with them. The men her